Hi there, I'm the Mythkeeper. Welcome back to my channel, the best place on the internet for Pathfinder lore and history. This week we're going back to Arcadia. We've already talked about Shopotl in Arcadia. I'm doing a second region deep dive here in Arcadia about the Grinding Coast. The Grinding Coast is mostly controlled by the Mahwek nation, which is called Degasi. They have a significant city called Segada, which has gotten a lot of detail in the source material and is probably the most important Mahwek city. But also the other reason that the Grinding Coast is particularly important, at least for the denizens of the Inner Sea, is that there is a Andorran colony and also a Chelish colony that can be found on the Grinding Coast. So I'm going to give a little bit of ancient Arcadian history in this video, as well as some more current events about what's happening in Arcadia today. Hope you enjoy.
The Grinding Coast and the Mahwek nation of Degasi. As described in my Shopotl region deep dive, the history of Arcadia, including the history of the Mahwek nation, is inextricably linked with the brutal history of the Empire of Razatlan. Not to repeat myself too much here, see my Shopotl region deep dive for more details, but the Empire of Razatlan was a contemporary of the most ancient empires of the world, Azlant, Taumata, and Thassalon. It was a pre-Earthfall empire that forcefully conquered numerous smaller cultures and communities using their mastery of advanced magic and secret technologies. Like those other ancient empires, Razatlan was devastated by the Earthfall cataclysm, and in the wake of that devastation, more fragmented and more unique nation-states and cultures began to emerge all across the continent. In northern Arcadia, the most significant of these were the Mahwek people, who would establish Degasi, the Mahwek nation of the Grinding Coast. Though they do not mark borders like the Avistani people do, the traditional Mahwek nation of Degasi stretches from the eastern shores of Lake Starfall across the treacherous Acrandida Mountains and encompasses the Grinding Coast, the long stretch of rugged coastline that runs from the Itnumi Sea in the north to the Shredar Peninsula in the south. Indeed, the Mahwek nation is not a nation, as the Avistani conceive the concept, operating under centralized governance. Instead, it's more like Shopotl, a land unified by a common people following common traditions, but actually comprised of many independent city-states as well as itinerant communities that slowly move across the length and breadth of the land. The Mahwek people are a northern Arcadian people, shaped by a land of rugged hills, swift waters, and deep whispering woods. The Mahwek are a proud and enduring people, known for their fierce independence, their eloquence, and their unwavering commitment to community and tradition. The Mahwek follow animist traditions, viewing the world as a great living web, every creature and stone tied together by the spirits of the earth. As a cooperative collective of city-states, the Mahwek prize eloquence almost as highly as bravery. Public speaking is considered an art form, and a leader who cannot weave words into binding agreements or rousing calls to action is viewed as an unfit guide. Councils are frequent, often lasting for days as issues are debated until consensus is reached. Yet for all their love of careful negotiations, the Mahwek are no strangers to action. When roused, their warriors strike with precision and cunning. Art and craftsmanship are woven into the fabric of Mahwek life. Intricate beadwork, elegant feathered cloaks, finely carved bone and stone, each piece beautiful but durable. Symbols of rivers, trees, stars, and sacred animals appear again and again. Storytelling, too, is a vital craft, with master storytellers preserving the great epics of their people in performances that blend music, dance, and myth. Proud but not haughty, fierce but not cruel, the Mahwek remain a people shaped by the rivers and the stones, the stars and the stories, and they walk still with the steady grace of those who know exactly who they are. Interestingly, more than any other people in Arcadia, the Mahwek people have had exposure to Avistani peoples from across the Arcadian Ocean. They were among the first people to encounter Ulfin explorers from the Linorm kingdoms and from Cape Almholt, who began to chart some of these lands as far back as the Age of Anguish. In fact, eventually the Linorm king Ulvas would leave the lands of the Linorm kings for Arcadia to establish the Ulfin settlement of Valenhall there in -473, over 5,000 years ago now. Much more recently, other Avistani settlers have arrived and built settlements along the Grinding Coast. First, colonists from Cheliax arrived about 50 years ago, and they established 2 small colonies along the southern stretch of the coast, close to a cluster of islands that form a part of the greater Ruins of Aslant archipelago. The northernmost colony was called Kenneris, and the southernmost colony, built closer to the Shredar Peninsula, was called Anchor's End. A few years later, Cheliax's chief political and economic rival in Andoran would establish a colony of their own further north, closer to the mouth of the Itnumi Sea, the logging town of Elosimer. It didn't take long for these new settlements to be noticed by the Mahwek people, who had to decide what to do with the foreigners that had appeared on their doorstep. Although it had been 10,000 years since the Earthfall cataclysm, the oral tradition of the Mahwek people had kept alive a healthy fear of foreign powers rising in the east from across the ocean. Aslanti invaders had once stormed Arcadia's eastern shores, and it was magic learned from the Aslanti that fueled the growth and power of Razatlan. Fearing that such a power might once again have consumed the east, the Mahwek nation knew it had to act quickly. Their decisions on how to deal with the foreigners were far from unanimous, so they spent months locked in deliberation and council. One saving grace for the Mahwek people that prevented the Avistani powers from knowing the full measure of their strength was that most of their larger settlements lay west of the Arcadia mountains, protected from the foreigners by these impassable peaks. The only safe pass across the mountains, in fact, was the Segada Pass, a thin strip of land cutting between the mountain range and allowing access to Lake Starfall and the fertile Degasi River Valley. Protecting the Segada Pass was the city of Segada, the Mahwek mountain fortress city, whose strategic location made the city one of the most important settlements in the nation of Degasi, the foundations of which dated all the way back to before the Earthfall cataclysm. These fortified mountaintop walls would ensure they could keep foreign colonists on the grinding coast from expanding into the nation's interior. Those Mahwek fishing villages situated along the grinding coast patiently awaited word from the western capital of Degasi itself before taking any action against the colonists, generally keeping their distances from the new arrivals. Finally, the Mahwek Congress reached a unified decision. The foreigners would be permitted to keep those settlements they had already claimed, but would be allowed to construct no further settlements, and they could not expand the existing settlements beyond the walls they had already constructed. If they did so, the Mahwek nation would consider this an act of war, and would raze the settlements to the ground. In exchange, the Mahwek would permit trade with Inner Arcadia across the city of Segada, although the settlers would only be permitted inland as far as the trade city itself. The Segada Protocol was presented to the settlers in 4679, now 46 years ago as of recording. Both the colonial leaders from Cheliax and Andoran agreed to these terms. In truth, both colonies had struggled in the previous few years to survive the brutal winters of the grinding coast, and were eager for a trade alliance. The Segada Protocol also increased the size of the Segadan Guard, and created a new agency that regularly inspected the Avistani settlements, both for their own protection and to ensure that they were following the law. Most recently, in 4715, 10 years ago now, terror struck the Chelish colony of Canaris, and the surviving townsfolk have since moved south to the larger settlement of Anchor's End, leaving Segadan forces to patrol only 2 Avistani settlements. 2 years later, in 4717, the Duchy of Ravenel seceded from Cheliax as part of the first edition Hell's Rebels adventure path. This is significant because the port of Kintargo, now a part of the new nation of Ravenel, was the primary port for Arcadian trade. I'll discuss this in more detail in my upcoming Gazetteer section, but this has placed the surviving Chelish port of Anchor's End in a curious position. A final recent development in the region has brought a third Avistani group, in addition of course to the Chelish, the Andorans, and the Ulfin of Valenhall, slowly closer to the Mahwek nation as well. That is, the gnome floating island of Gogpoda. Gogpoda is a floating island of detritus that a group of gnome explorers discovered after a shipwreck and found habitable, thanks to the fish and shrimp living in the wreckage. They eventually permanently settled there, and the island has been slowly moving southwards towards warmer climates. It's now a key part of the greater trade network that has been slowly and steadily forming around the grinding coast. Between the Andoran colony of Velosamere, the Chelish colony of Anchor's End, the Ulfin colony of Port Valen in the north, and the Gnome Island settlement of Gogpoda, the colonial powers in northeastern Arcadia have formed a new body called the Shore Council to work collectively across this growing trade network. As we can see, changes come to Degasi and the Mahwek nation in recent generations. New goods, new ideas, and new threats press at the borders of their lands. Some young Mahwek seek new opportunities beyond their pristine wilds, while others cling ever more fiercely to the old ways, seeing in the rising tide a challenge to their identity. What the future holds for this land, only time will tell. The Grinding Coast Gazetteer. For this video, I'm going to start my Gazetteer in the east, further out from the Mahwek nation, and close in on it. I will also save Segada, the critical city that serves as the gate to the mainland Arcadia across the mountains, for last, as it is the most complex and well-documented city in these lands. Port Valen. Port Valen is not technically on the grinding coast, nor on the lands controlled by the Mahwek nation of Degasi. It's actually quite a bit further north, located on the coast of the more northern lands called the Land of the Northern Lakes. But as it's part of the Greater Shore Council and does extensive trade with the Grinding Coast, it seems worth also touching on them here. Port Valen is an Ulfin colony on what are called the Scarred Shores. The Ulfin have been in these lands much longer than anyone else from the east, and over time the Ulfin colonists have forged peaceful ties with the local Mahwek people, and today the town thrives through this shared legacy. Roughly a third of Port Valen's inhabitants are of mixed Ulfin Mahwek descent, calling themselves the Valenborn. Though romanticized as a warrior's afterlife in Ulfin skald songs, the real Port Valen is a modest walled town governed by Mayor Sonidaga Bloodfang, with a strong local militia led by Captain Myrta Kroniksdottir, who helps defend against ongoing threats from nearby monster-infested wilds. The Pathfinder Society established the first Pathfinder Lodge of the New World there only last year in 4724 in the Pathfinder adventure Path of Kings and Guardian's Covenant. They wisely assigned the post of venture captain to a local Mahwek woman named Rahaxenwe, who, thanks to her heritage, has greater access than foreigners do to the Arcadian interior. Rahaxenwe also serves as the representative for Port Valen on the Shore Council. Gogpoda, the Drifting Isle. Originally adrift in the steaming sea, Gogpoda is a floating island unlike any other, an accidental landmass born from centuries of accumulated flotsam, drifting seaweed, animal remains, and shipwreck detritus, all bound together by tide, time, and tenacity. Miles wide and deceptively solid, this strange patchwork island rides the waves like a ponderous beast, its surface fertile in unexpected ways. The first known settlers of Gogpoda were a band of gnome explorers, shipwrecked and presumably lost, until they stumbled across the floating mass and found it, against all odds, habitable. Feeding on the fish and shrimp, thriving in the wreckage below, and cultivating hardy plants nourished by seabird droppings, the survivors repaired what they could of their own vessel. But not all chose to leave. Many remained, founding a permanent settlement atop the living raft. News of their survival and the island's wonders soon reached the mainland, drawing more gnome settlers eager for adventure and discovery. Life on Gogpoda is as precarious as it is novel. The island's bounty is modest and often unpredictable, forcing the inhabitants to rely partially on supply runs from the mainland. Even so, its curious ecology and ever-changing contents, thanks to the wreckage that regularly drifts into its underbelly, made it a haven for scavengers, naturalists, and treasure hunters alike. Many residents are temporary, staying only as long as their curiosity or courage lasts. Because it floats, Gogpoda has been drifting since its founding, a drift which has carried it from the cold waters of the steaming sea southwards and westwards. It has made its way from the coastlines of the iron-bound archipelago to the Mordant Spire, past the coast of Hermia, and now it inches ever closer to the Grinding Coast, where it forms a new and critical part of the Arcadian sea trade circuit. According to the gnomes who live there, numerous attempts have been made to anchor or steer the island, but all have failed. Gogpoda follows no master and heeds no mooring. Elosamer, the Andorran colony on Arcadia. The key industries of Andoran, which include the sale of crafted finished goods, especially wooden furnishings, chairs, tables, cabinets, and so on, as well as the business of logistics and shipping, all require tremendous amounts of lumber. A vast number of ships are produced in the port city of Augustana, and wooden trade goods are heavily produced across the nation. Their lumbering has basically eradicated the Arthfell forest, and has done untold damage to the Verduran as well. It's no surprise that their colony in Arcadia is primarily a logging colony, as the nation seeks new sources of hardwoods to keep up with the needs of their industry. However, the work of Elosamer has not provided the volume of lumber the Andorrans had once hoped it would. The colonialists who settled in Elosamer did so in the Revolutionary period, when anti-Thrune sentiment was at its highest, and when war with Cheliax was clear and present. Separated from the mainland as they were, the colonists have remained wide-eyed and idealistic about their values. As such, when the Lumber Consortium, Andoran's extremely powerful logging conglomerate, began to move in and manage work in Elosamer, the locals revolted. These Arcadian idealists have begun sabotaging the lumber operations in the colony to try to dismantle the power of the Lumber Consortium in Arcadia. These young radicals say the captains of industry in Andoran are now like unto the kings of old. Back in Avestan, both the Andorran government and even the Eagle Knights do not approve of the goings-on in Elosamer, but due to the distance they have been slow to send reinforcements to aid the beleaguered Lumber Consortium camps in Arcadia. The ruins of Canaris. Built atop a network of hidden caverns, The colony prospered briefly before its sudden and catastrophic fall. 10 years ago, the Chelish colony of Canis was attacked by a horrifying creature that emerged from the depths of the Darklands when their mining operation accidentally penetrated a Caligni community hidden in the depths below. The Caligni directed a Telgrodrat upwards to strike at the Canarite miners. A Telgrodrat is a monster resembling a gigantic writhing grub with translucent flesh, whipping tentacles, hooked limbs, and a round, toothy maw. Thanks to their pallid flesh and stench of decay, Telgrodrats are often confused for undead abominations, a confusion which is exacerbated by the fact that many keep a herd of zombie thralls under their control, but they are in fact merely strange aberrations born of the Darklands. Regardless, that eventual assault on the surface settlement was swift and overwhelming. The attack combined the might of the Darkfolk with hordes of animated dead sowing terror throughout the fledgling village. Zombies overran the streets, and resistance collapsed almost overnight. In a final desperate attempt to reclaim the settlement, a party of adventurers descended into the twisting tunnels beneath Canaris, but only one explorer returned, and she survived only long enough to recount the horrors she had witnessed before succumbing to a strange, fatal illness that soon transformed her into an undead creature as well. The fall of Canaris resulted in the deaths of dozens, and those few who survived the carnage fled south to Anchor's End. The memory of Canaris remains a grim warning along the Arcadian coast, and among its many whispered horrors, none is more feared than the tale of the monstrous Canaris grub, said to still lurk in the depths below the lost colony. Anchor's End. Anchor's End is the only surviving Chelish colony in Arcadia, so Cheliax is quite protective of it. Anchor's End, like Canaris as well, was established primarily as a mining colony, located near a cave system with rich veins of gold to be mined. The settlement also exports red and black Arcadian marble back to Cheliax. This marble is favored by Agorian's noble class and government, who incorporate the marble in their dwellings and civic buildings. The Empire of Cheliax has never truly respected the Segada protocols, despite signing it almost 50 years ago. In the mind of the Chelish state, the implicit threat of war is essentially an opt-out clause. They know they can cancel the agreement at any time and establish more colonies in Arcadia simply by declaring war on the Mahwek nation. Unfortunately for Cheliax, any such action would be impossible right now. After quelling a significant civil struggle with the glorious reclamation in the south, the loss of a critical armada in the Shackles, and the loss of their holdings in Rahadum, and finally the loss of the Duchy of Ravenel, Cheliax is in no state to go to war with the Mahwek nation. Furthermore, they have other challenges with Anchor's End as it is. Baron Sendi Vashnarstil, lord of the wealthy and noble Vashnarstil family, was instrumental in establishing the trade network between Anchor's End and Cheliax. Trade with Anchor's End was largely coordinated from his home in the port city of Kintargo. Well, as we know well, 8 years ago, Ravenel seceded from the Empire of Cheliax. This means House Thrune is having to find all new partners to manage Arcadian shipping interests, and in the meantime, Ravenel has not stopped making use of Anchor's End either, meaning that a lot of the wealth from the New World that traditionally flowed into Cheliax is now going to Ravenel instead. The situation in Anchor's End, then, is just as complicated as they are in the Andoran colony of Velosamere, all of which is good for the Mahwek nation, who don't particularly want the trouble of foreign conquerors on their soil anyway. Degasi. Degasi is the name of both the Mahwek nation and also the name of their capital city. The exact location of the Mahwek capital is not identified in the source material, as there are few detailed maps of Arcadia in general. However, it is likely that it is located close to Lake Starfall, a large mainland lake around which a number of important settlements can be found. There is in fact a river that runs from Lake Starfall out to the bay of the Etnumi Sea, providing an alternative path to the Mahwek coastal villages from the mountain pass through Segada, and it seems likely that this would be a reasonably strategic and important location for the capital city. That said, this is speculation on my part. The word Starfall in Starfall Lake is almost certainly a reference to the period when the Earthfall cataclysm caused the Starstone meteorite to shatter in the atmosphere and rain down across the land. Obviously, we know a large chunk of the Starstone landed in the Inner Sea region. We also know from my Shopatl region deep dive that another piece of the meteorite struck near Shopatl as well. All across the Arcadian continent, the meteorite rained chunks of star metal, and especially in the northern stretch of the Mildonesi Mountains, a region called the Crown Peaks, quite far to the west of Lake Starfall. Here a reclusive people called the Crowned Regents, who would form the wealthy city of High Klesh, pioneered the smithing of projectile weaponry using the sky metals. These so-called star guns are prized across Arcadia, and some of those weapons have made it as far east as Degasi itself. Per the terms of the Segada protocols, the Mahweks who possess them do not trade star guns with the foreign colonists on their shores. The Crown Peaks, the Regents, and their surrounding lands are topics I'll cover in a future video about the Deadshot lands to the west. Nishan. Nishan is a Mahwek city located at the southern coast of Lake Starfall. Like the connective city of Segada, Nishan has emerged as an important city in recent years, albeit a substantially smaller township and one that has garnered interest from the few Avistani visitors that have been permitted beyond the Segada Pass. Important events connected to the town of Nishan occurred over a trilogy of 2nd edition Pathfinder Society adventures: negotiations for the star gun, within the prairies, and protecting the firelight. During these events, a broken star gun, a relic called Hatahasi, was discovered by the Pathfinder Society. Hatahasi had been stolen some years earlier by Chelish infiltrators who had broken the Segada protocols. A select group of Pathfinder Society agents were ultimately allowed by the Mahwek Nation, with escort, to bring the recovered weapon to the town of Nishan, where a skilled starsmith might be able to repair the ancient weapon. Nishan is a prairie town, typical of the Mahwek style, a collection of thatched roof longhouses and deer-hide tents surrounded by wooden palisades. The halfling mayor Dayahi lives here, in a richly decorated home painted in hues of blue, black, and white. Ornate tapestries hang from her walls, depicting various events from Mahwek legends, and she keeps an assortment of cushions arranged in a neat circle around a tiny fire that is ventilated through a central hole in a roof. One enduring tradition in the town is that each year the people of Nishan gather to celebrate the Firelight Festival, honoring both the changing seasons and the town's founding. According to the tradition, the first settlers survived their inaugural night on the prairie by lighting a fire and confronting the spirits drawn to it, some with diplomacy and others with force. It is said their courage earned the land's blessing, and so construction of the town began at dawn. To commemorate that night, the town kindles a great fire and appoints 4 citizens, those who have served the community in the past year, to serve as the Fire Watch. Through this night each year, these guardians keep vigil beside the flames, a symbolic warding off of the restless spirits. The fire must not be allowed to die, for legend holds that if it does, the pact with the prairie will be broken and Nishan's future will be placed in jeopardy. Segada. Segada is the gateway to Arcadia, and sometimes often called the City of Keys. Nestled in the sheltered folds of the Arcadia Mountains, Segada rises in tiers of timber and stone, its rooftops catching the sun between the long fingers of pine, birch, and maple. The city sprawls across a series of cliffs as terraced homes climb the hillsides, while elegant bridges and mechanical lifts, marvels of star metal engineering, link the various levels of the city with impressive grace. In autumn, Segada is particularly beautiful, the surrounding forests blazing with red and gold. Approaching Segada is no easy feat. Travelers must brave narrow, winding trails and treacherous mountain paths before the city's shadowed profile appears, carved against the sky. The central districts are densely packed with markets, theaters, and government halls, while the outer neighborhoods open into gardens, parks, and family homes set against sweeping views of the mountains. Life in Segada occurs largely outdoors. Residents often dine outside beneath the maples or gather in parks to watch children play, while musicians tune their lutes in nearby pavilions. Segada's history is one of resilience. What began as a humble hunter's camp near a clean water source grew, generation by generation, into a fortified mountain city. Its early years were marked by a conflict with the Syrinx of the southern peaks, who claimed the cliffs above Segada's waterfalls as sacred ground. After a series of bloody skirmishes, the Segadans prevailed, aided by adventurers whose stories remain woven into the city's founding myths. That victory forged a cultural identity rooted in quiet perseverance and collective strength. Later threats came in the form of the Gear Wars in the middle of the 36th century, when a sudden coordinated assault by weirwoods and their mechanical war machines attacked from the mountain woodlands. The initial devastation was staggering, and only the intervention of various allied cities from the Mahwek Nation turned the tide. When peace returned, Segada was forever changed. Its population swelled with soldiers, refugees, and craftsmen who chose to remain. The city's walls grew higher, its identity stronger, and its role on the Arcadian stage more prominent. The discovery of gold, coal, and other valuable minerals in the surrounding mountains marked another turning point. Prospectors, traders, and fortune seekers arrived in droves, swelling the city's coffers and diversifying its population. When more recently Avistani colonists made landfall on the grinding coast, it was Segada, already politically savvy and diplomatically networked, that helped form the Segada Protocol, a landmark agreement ensuring Arcadian nations had a unified voice in negotiating with the foreign powers. Despite its stone walls and guarded passes, Segada is no austere fortress. The city hums with music, storytelling, and art. From taverns tucked into cliffside alcoves to open-air theaters that host nightly performances, creativity flourishes here. Segadans cherish quiet conversations, long silences, and careful thought. They are a contemplative people who value deep reflection over quick answers, and who measure strength not just by steel but by wisdom and restraint. Yet military readiness remains a central pillar of Segadan life. Lookout towers ring the ridges above the city, and well-trained units stand ready to defend against monstrous incursions or supernatural threats. Yet even here discipline is balanced with compassion. The city's social safety nets are robust. Mash houses serve free meals of corn mash, and shelters welcome the homeless without judgment. Though not all problems are solved, Segada strives to ensure that no one faces hardship alone. The city's population is primarily human, but is far from homogeneous. Halflings from the lowland coasts, gnomes from the Arcadia high peaks, and even weirwoods, descendants of former enemies, now call Segada home. The city's gnome population in particular lends color and energy to its streets, performing in dance halls and public squares, while halflings contribute significantly to the city's growing trade networks. The inclusion of weirwoods in recent generations reflects the city's evolving ideals, cautious trust, earned through shared labor and coexistence. Segada's governance is methodical and deliberate, often frustratingly so to outsiders used to rapid decisions. Debates are long, votes are rare, and achieving wide-reaching consensus is the goal always sought for. Yet it is this very patience that has preserved the city through centuries of turmoil. Every brick laid and every law passed comes from the belief that a strong city is not built in haste, but with care, reflection, and the quiet certainty that it must serve not only the present, but the generations still to come. Today, Segada stands as a symbol of Arcadian independence and adaptability. It's a city rooted in stone, but alive with motion, where metal climbers scale cliffs, music dances through the air, and old enemies have become neighbors. Though surrounded by ancient dangers and the shadows of rising powers, Segada endures, not by conquest but by the strength of its people and the quiet wisdom of their ways. Geographically, Segada is divided into three core districts: the Central District, the oldest and still most important parts of the city; the Stacks, where over time people built upon ridges overlooking the Central District; and the Western Lows, that is so populated by gnomes and halflings it is also informally referred to as the Small Quarter. Important locations in Segada include the Oland Estate. High above the city, where the twin falls thunder into the snowmelt lake, the Oland Estate watches from its lofty perch. Its reclusive owner, Luma Oland, became something of a local curiosity after rebuilding the mansion's burned wing with a towering metal spire, claiming it safely channels lightning strikes into the bedrock below. Rumors swirl around his strange experiments during thunderstorms, and few who visit the estate return without a story to tell. Snowmelt Lake. Fed by twin waterfalls, Snowmelt Lake provides both leisure and inspiration for Segada's citizens. On fair weather days, boats drift across its cool surface, and during concerts at the nearby amphitheater, couples row to the center to share whispered poetry. Local legend tells of a ghostly figure, an ill-fated lover, who appeared on the rocks near the falls during the Waning Light Festival, weeping for a partner lost to the water's pull. The Riverhead Amphitheater. Carved into the cliffs above Snowmelt Lake, the Riverhead Amphitheater is the crown jewel of Segada's artistic scene. Nearly every evening sees performances ranging from storytelling and dance to concerts and comedic boasts. Its most beloved performer is Une Deepsky, a gifted bard whose voice and wit draws thousands. Une lives without possessions, wandering from home to home. His only aim is to sing the soul of the city. Admirers call him Segada's muse. Critics see him as a well-loved vagabond. The Climbers. To conquer the city's sharp vertical terrain, Segadan engineers devised the Climbers, metal and wood elevator-like structures that ascend the city's cliffs on geared tracks. A zigzag stair runs beside each climber, providing access during off-hours or maintenance. Most operate from dawn to dusk, though the climbers to the northern stacks run late into the night, a matter of contention among light-sensitive residents. The climbers were originally imported from the far-off city-state of Three Craters, renowned for its ingenious metallurgy and rare sky metals. The cliffside citadels. Perched on the heights surrounding Segada, these imposing watchposts date back to the city's earliest days. Originally built to ward off threats from the grinding coast, the citadels remain fully manned and alert, now primarily tasked with monitoring foreign incursions from the east. Remnants of past conflicts, such as rogue clockwork soldiers and rebellious weirwoods, still linger, and Segada's vigilant city guard, led by the formidable Takewanda Ulash, and her 12 lieutenants train tirelessly to meet any threat. The snowmelt locks. Built 2 centuries ago to manage spring flooding, the snowmelt locks are now a vital part of the city's water control infrastructure. Operated by the Orenta family, the locks also serve more personal ends. Sagowin Orenta, current patriarch, is known to manipulate the flow to irritate his rivals, particularly the Wees family, who rely on the steady water for their millwork. The Wees Mill. Perched where Snowmelt Lake cascades into the Turusi River, Wees Mill is Segada's oldest and largest milling operation, processing grain and spices from across the Central Plains. It serves as a crucial supply hub. Yet its fortunes are tightly linked to the Orenta-controlled locks upstream, and a long-standing feud between the two families continues to shape the rhythms of Segada's food trade. The Open Arms Mash House. Though modest in appearance, the Open Arms Mash House plays a vital role in Segada's social safety net, offering free meals of corn mash to the city's struggling residents. However, beneath its charitable facade also lies a secret truth. It serves as a hub for the Stone Rats, a local thieves guild. Its operator, Surentif Alamon, walks the line between benefactor and criminal, using the mash house as both community shelter and a cover for his illicit dealings. The 16 Finches. For those seeking pleasures beyond Segada's tightly regulated bounds, the 16 Finches offers discreet indulgence. Nominally a reputable eatery, the establishment conceals a flourishing black market operation, offering intoxicants and private rooms for trusted patrons. Proprietor Kuta, a cunning gnome with a gift for manipulation, manages the operation with care, bribing officials, employing off-duty guards, and maintaining a rumored trove of blackmail materials in a forbidden 13th room. The Crow in the Spruce. This raucous beer hall in the western Lows is famed not only for its potent brews and hearty fare, but also for its competitive storytelling contests. Each night, laughter and wit echo from its crowded common room, as locals vie to outboast each other. The annual championship is a citywide event, with the winner claiming the Squawking Cup, a ceramic vessel said to possess minor magical properties awarded to the sharpest tongue in Segada. Blueberry Park. Separating Segada's bustling central district from the quieter residential quarters to the south, Blueberry Park offers a tranquil green refuge, shaded by broad trees and dotted with playgrounds and picnic groves. It's a favorite gathering place for families and children alike. In late summer, the namesake blueberry bushes hang heavy with fruit, drawing crowds eager to fill their baskets. At the southern end lies a popular swimming pond, while the north hosts a bound ball field, where Segadans gather to cheer the bruising acrobatic sport passed down through centuries of Arcadian tradition. With Segada poised to host the next inter-regional bound ball championship in 2 years, construction is already underway on a new tournament venue. Kenkadanda Bridge. A triumph of modern Segadan engineering, the Kenkadanda Bridge spans one of the city's most impassable chasms. Constructed a century ago with the help of the city's weirwood population, the bridge was controversial during its planning. Some decried its disruption to the city's aesthetics, others its construction noise. Today, with construction complete, it stands as a proud symbol of unity and resilience, connecting once isolated neighborhoods and bearing testament to Segada's ingenuity. The House of Keys. Segada's political heart beats within the House of Keys, a stately complex housing both the city council chambers and a network of licensing and diplomatic offices. Every civic function, from trade permits to foreign treaties, passed through these stone corridors. The landmark Segada Protocol was signed here, and it remains the seat of Mayor Wanakina Awasul. Her official residence, the House of Tall Stones, stands across the green, a short walk away. Though a handful of Avestani have petitioned for embassy space within the building, their request remains under deliberation. The Diori Estate. Once home to the first Avestani to receive Segadan citizenship, the Diori Estate remains a symbol of cultural dialogue. Pim Diori, born mere days after the first cellist ship landed on Arcadia, rose to prominence for his work bridging Avestani settlers and native Mahwek communities. Now a permanent Segadan resident, he shares the estate with his outspoken wife Sokanan, whose colonial sympathies often contrast sharply with Pim's Arcadian loyalties. Though some in Anchor's End view the couple with suspicion, in Segada they remain a fixture of civic life.